going to go ahead and get started. First, I want to thank everyone who participated in the dental marketing study. This took a lot of work on many people's side. I want to thank a lot of my team for all the work they did in reaching out, calling, and emailing and working with a lot of the dental practices that participated in the study. And really want to thank all of you for your time that you invested. We know your time is extremely valuable and appreciate you putting your time into helping uh, kind of gather this information and then help disseminate it to you so that you can better understand how practices are seeing their marketing and what some of the challenges are. So I'm going to jump right in. We have a lot to cover, and so I'm going to kind of go fast, but you are going to have availability to these slides at a later date. So just to give you an overall agenda, I'm going to talk about some of the highlights from the dental marketing study, some of the interesting correlations I found between some of the practices that are a little more successful, and we're going to dive into some of the top tactics that dental practices recognized as being more effective for them. And so I'm going to give you kind of a deep dive into some of the information there. And then I'm going to give you a few things that are really simple that I'm going to ask you to implement today. It's that simple where you can kind of get it set up, get it going, but get you started off on the right process. So it'll be a few things just that you can start going right away. We're going to talk a little bit about the patient journey, how someone, when they're considering working with a dental practice, what's the thought process that they go through, and then we're going to tie it all together with strategy, and then we're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. All right. So why did we start this study? I want to first say that we've found a lot. We've basically naturally accumulated a lot of clients in the medical industry, and we were looking to specialize in one of those specific industries. And the dental area was one that just stood out to me as an area that we really wanted to focus on. A couple reasons why. One is it's a competitive industry, and we like to work in more competitive industries. The dentists that I've worked with, I've loved working with some of my favorite clients, and we saw one of our clients that from 8 years ago, they sold their practice. We ended up working with a new dentist in the new practice and still work with them today. Also, my father, that's him in the top left-hand corner, has been a dentist for over 40 years. This was their kind of reunion for OHSU. And it's something that he used to tell me when he had his own practice. He used to tell him that he learned how to be a great dentist, and they taught him everything he needed to be how to great dentist. And he was very proud of being a very good dentist and providing great care, but they never taught him how to run a practice or market his practice. And so it's something that really stuck with me, and I really wanted to share some of those same challenges and try to provide some solutions for practices that are out there. So right now, we've had about 46 practices that participated in the survey. And so I'm going to dive into some of the information. Again, I'm going to kind of go through some of this rapid fire. This is just a preliminary overview, and then we're going to publish this information and share it with everyone who participated in the study, and then ultimately publish it online in multiple places and formats. So one thing that's interesting, you had about a little over half of the people that participated were over the $1 million mark, and then the other half were under the $1 million mark. So you see 44.1% were in that 1 to 2 million range, and then you had roughly about 6% that were over 5 million. Of those practices, the majority of them had about 6 to 10 employees. And so you'll see this data, we'll lay it out. I'm actually going to give everyone access to the raw data as well, where you can play and manipulate the data based on different factors, and that's where you'll find some of the stronger correlations. Now, this question was interesting. We basically asked, do you own or rent your website? And you can see the majority, about 78%, own their own website. 16% rent, and about 4.8% aren't sure. Now, I'm going to pick on that 4.8%. This is kind of like not knowing if you own your house or not. So your website actually should be producing income for you. It should be more valuable than your home, right? Because your home is a liability, it's an asset too, but you're having to make monthly payments on it and all that. So here, this should be producing a significant amount of money for you. So you should definitely understand whether you own your website. And really, if you're renting your website currently, you need to change that as well. You need to, just like if you're renting a facility, there's benefits to that, but eventually you probably want to own, you're paying that regardless. So now, this is one of the areas that I think really stood out as far as that was very validating for me in a lot of ways. Was we asked, how would you rate the effectiveness of the different tactics that you'd utilized? And they went through and rated, dentists rated all these different areas. What's interesting is all of the digital tactics, based on what they rated, were in the top part of the quadrant, and the traditional advertising, like billboards and direct mail and all those other things, were in the bottom part of the quadrant. And so you'll see here, now this wasn't a surprise to me, but it may be a surprise to some of you, that SEO, organic SEO in the search engines, and not in the paid section, was the #1 area. And then after that, you had paid search, content marketing, social, email marketing, and social organic. Social organic being lower. Now you'll see the rating over here is about 5, and then below that, this is kind of the rating of everything together, all tactics, channels, as rated by dental practices, office managers, dentists, practice administrators, and things like that. So down at the bottom, obviously, television, yellow pages, newspaper, radio, billboard, and then on up. We're going to dive into this a lot more in the future, but I want to show you a couple more things. So one of the other questions we ask is, do you work with an outside agency that handles aspects of your marketing? An interesting correlation is that of the practices that we asked, generally speaking, the larger practices tend to work with agencies. Now, that could be because they're larger and they need that, but they also had an average. We asked a question that we don't have in here, but we asked a question about how many people do you have dedicated to marketing your practice, and they were actually lower. So the larger practices had less people internally that focused on marketing. They were actually putting that out to experts that handle that for them. I'll show you some of the data, and it's kind of interesting. So, do you work with a marketing agency? About 50, I think it was 7% said yes, overall. Now, these were the actual services these agencies were performing. So, #1 is search engine optimization, right? Um, so they're looking to have an agency handle that for them. Traditional advertising, which kind of bulks a lot of those traditional things into one area, was #2. Paid search, content, social media, email marketing, etc. Now this was one that blew me away. We asked what the average return on investment that they were getting from their spend with their agency. Now this is valuable not only for dental practices but for agencies that work with dental practices as well. This is one of the key components we look at with our clients, is because you should be getting a minimum of 3x on any marketing dollars you spend. And if you're not getting at least that, I don't feel we can ethically recommend that you continue spending money in that area, at least in the digital realm. In the print realm, there's places where you might break even if you're doing more of a branding campaign. But when you're doing more of this kind of targeted digital strategy, you should be looking to get at least 3x. But 55% of the people that were surveyed weren't sure of the return on investment they were getting from the agency that they were working with. That is, to me, just astounding. Now, this person, right, a couple of people said they were getting better than a 6 times return on investment. Now, that's great. Definitely keep working with the agency that you're working with there. But the majority of people were either not sure or getting less than a 3x return on investment. And so it's really important. One of the correlations I kind of saw between the people that were very satisfied with their agencies, higher revenue. So it's really important that you find good partners in this area. We asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your satisfaction with your contracted agencies? And you'll see here, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's 5.92. I definitely know I wouldn't be happy with that, but when you're looking at those ratings of, most of the people getting less than 3x, that definitely correlates here. So, um, one of the challenges you'll see is, finding a good partner to work with, and that really pulls that out. Now, one of the areas that really stood out to me was, we asked, this was for us, but also for other agencies as well, as we asked, what is a piece of advice that you would give to agencies that you're working with that they could serve you better? And it really stood down to both understanding them, their goals, the marketplace, providing more information, and really helping them understand what was working and what wasn't working overall, right? So we kind of disseminated that data, and you'll see that they really wanted to improve communication, responsiveness was important, and that overall tracking was a big part of it, and kind of communicating that. Some of the feedback was, there's people that it was clear, like, you just shouldn't be working with that agency if they're not responding to you in a timely manner, or if it's you haven't met with them in 3 months. Those are things that, it should be a red flag. You should be looking for another agency to work with. Now, with SEO being one of the top tactics, I wanted to do a little farther dive in there to give you guys some education on that area so that you can make sure you're making the right decisions. We also have some resources that you can, if you want to, dive in and learn more. One of the key components to understand is when someone is looking for a new dental practice, they're not just, it's not like they already have someone there. If they're unhappy with their current dentist, if they're looking to move, if they're new to the area, if they have, whatever it may be, they start their journey in search. 77% of patients were using search prior to booking an appointment. And so now, I do want to highlight this because not everyone understands the difference between paid search and kind of the local organic search areas. So I highlighted this section. You generally see this little ad text highlighting what are paid ads, and then the rest is generally local and organic. See here, there's another ad in the local section that's relatively new in the last few months. So let's talk, I'm going to give you a little bit of highlights on what's important from an on-page SEO component. There's generally two main factors when it comes to SEO. You have on-site factors and you have off-site factors. That's kind of the easiest way to break that down. Now, on-page factors are things like your title tag, and I'm going to give you a visual of, and so you can really understand what this is a little bit more. Meta description, having quality and engaging content on your website, making sure that you're optimizing your images, your alt text, that you have a good internal linking structure, site architecture, user experience, that you're utilizing schema, which you can utilize schema to actually mark up who is the dentist on the site, so Google specifically knows, and they can assign information as far as value to that dentist as well. Now, here's a kind of more of a visual. When you're looking at a page and you see that language at the top here, that's your title tag. It's important that that be descriptive of what the page is about. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this today, but your URL structure should also be similar. It should use some of the same keywords and topics. If someone's looking at this URL, they should be able to understand what that page is about in general, right? A lot of times URLs will have numbers and codes in them and things like that, and this is not a good factor. When they get to the page, it's important that they have a descriptive page title on that page. Again, they should have some relevance to both the title tag and the URL structure. The image itself having an alt tag that's descriptive of the image, and the file name right here should be descriptive as well. And then, of course, the body text should be compelling, have enough depth of topic and content there to really provide value to the user. So that's just a real general overview of on-page SEO factors. Now, external SEO factors, what we often call endorsements, are things like people linking to your website, citations of your website, or even mentions of your brand name. Now, just to give you a high-level overview of links, I'm guessing a lot of people know what a link is to their website. It's just when another website links to you, they can click on that link and visit your website. In the beginning of Google's algorithm, that was the majority of the algorithm. They basically looked at it as if someone's linking to you or your content, they're endorsing that content. And it used to be the more links, the better, but now it's more of a quality over quantity type factor. And there's literally hundreds of different elements that go into the value of links, the quantity, the relevance, and all those factors. Now, citations are basically your name, address, and phone number, and how those show up across literally hundreds of thousands of different websites. Now, you want to make sure that some of the niche sites like health grades and things like that are also updated as well and accurate. But in the dental world, especially if you have more than one dentist working in your practice, there becomes complexities as far as listing the practice name and then dentists underneath that. There's specific guidelines that Google has around listing those practices, so it's important that you know that. But making sure that your name, address, and phone number, NAP for short, is accurate across literally hundreds of sites is a critical component, not only for user experience, but from appearing in that local section for SEO, that is a huge component of that. Now, this just gives you kind of an idea how your website is the center of all the links pointing to your website. Your Google listing is the center of all your citations. And there's major data providers like Info USA, the data aggregators in general are Info USA, Localese, Axiom, and Factual. Now, those data aggregators take all that content and they disseminate it to literally thousands of sites. So it's important to make sure that it's updated and it's accurate with those sites first, otherwise you just continue to get bad data into other areas. And then you're looking at the authority, the quantity, and consistency of the citations to your site. Again, kind of covering a high level overview. I just want to give you kind of a little bit of depth into it, and from there you can get some more. Now, reputation specifically for dentists is critical. You'll see here the study done by Bright Local, looking at how much does reputation matter when choosing a business, and you're right behind restaurant and cafe along with doctors and dentists, right? In that specific category, it's one of the highest things people are looking at. They're reading your reviews. It's critical that you have a strategy in place to make sure you're driving a good reputation. Not only does it help from obviously people converting and taking action, but it also can have a benefit from an SEO perspective. If people are actually putting keywords and providing user-generated reviews, that content can help you rank as well. Now, another part of the study that was done by Bright Local looked at what percentage of consumers would use a business if it had X number of reviews. And at 4 out of 5 stars, 94% of people would still do business with you. So that's not bad, but what you have to be careful of is when you drop down to 3 out of 5 stars, 57% of people reported that they still do business with you. That's a loss of 43%. So if you had potential revenue of say $1 million flowing through that channel, that's a loss of $430,000 of opportunity lost. It's just critical that you take a proactive approach to that strategy. So we asked everybody, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to marketing your practice? There was a lot of great answers, but it really came down to knowing what works. You can see right here, knowing, tracking, patience, marketing, time, cost. The top area was really knowing what was working and what wasn't working, and that was a big component. Also, with the feedback on the agency side, was really understanding what is what are you doing and how's it working for us. So for agencies, it's really important that you are communicating the value to your clients and telling them this is what we've done and this is what it's doing and here's the return on investment you're getting from this, right? That's a critical component. The other big part, of course, is cost, budget overall. That was kind of the second factor, and then time. So cost, you see cost, money, all these other factors in there, and then time was another big factor. So cost, money, budget, time. Time was a big factor, and that's something for everyone. One of the things we noticed is a lot of the practices, the office manager was also handling the marketing in some cases, or certain elements of the marketing, and that's where it just became difficult. And I think time was a greater factor there. So now I wanted to give you guys something you could do today, and you could actually just get some action and get some positive momentum going forward. So I'm giving you a few tips. These are things that literally you can do, and it'll take you, depending on how you do it, it might take you less than 15 minutes. That you're gonna get started right away. So my bet is that almost none of you have this app installed, but all of you should. It's the Google My Business app. The Google My Business is your listing on Google, and anytime someone reviews you, you get a notification. And so it'll actually prompt you and say, hey, you got a 5-star review from so-and-so. And then you can go in there and you can thank that person. And it also shows when other people are coming to your listing, it shows them that you're active. Google wants to reward people who are interacting with the platform because they have a higher level of confidence that the customer's gonna have a good experience with you, and it's their customer, so they want to make sure they have a good experience. So download the Google My Business app, completely fill out your GMB profile, right? So that's your categories, your description. You want to add images of the interior, the exterior, maybe some of your team, your dentist. You can do all that with your phone right inside the app. You can take pictures and actually upload that. It makes it extremely simple. Again, it might take you 10 minutes, 15 minutes max to do all of that. And then Google recently launched the ability to post. So you can post right into the search results. You can say a little information, whether it's like a special offer or just some information. You can do an event. And this is, again, it's that interactivity that Google wants to see. We've used it recently. You can see right here, we have an event coming up. It's October 24th. We're actually having a speaker come down from Seattle talking about Facebook ads, tips and tricks, things like that. And what we've noticed is when we post this on here, our listing overall gets a lot more views online. It actually shows up quite a bit more, and there's a lot of interactivity with this. It also makes your listing stand out more, right? You have more real estate when people are looking there. And so it's really important that you do that, you utilize that feature. Most posts do expire after about 7 days, but events will actually stay up until the event. So, utilize that for what you can. Now, I know some of you are going to want more information. I know some of the dentists I work with like to um, really dive in and get to understand things better. And we do appreciate that. The more educated you are, the more you appreciate the work we do or your agency does for you. So we actually we put together a fair amount of resources at this URL, webfor.com/resources. You can download the SEO 101 white paper. That's probably where I'd tell you to start, since SEO is clearly one of the top channels for dentists. So download that. It'll give you some insights into really understanding SEO and what's important about SEO and just kind of the basics. There's also a few other resources there which we'll talk about in a second. So another question we asked in the study was, do you have defined personas to help target your ideal clients? And 64% said no. This wasn't actually, what was a surprise to me is that 35% actually said yes. And I think as I define this more clearly, I think maybe even less would say yes, because I think what they're thinking is, oh, this is our overall kind of demographic target market, which isn't necessarily a persona. So let me explain a little bit why having a defined persona and understanding the patient journey is critical to having a targeted campaign and really taking care of them throughout this process. So a persona is a detailed kind of outline of your ideal patient. It should have demographic information, psychographic information, and kind of an overall story. And I provided this example here of Julia, right? She's getting out of college. She's planning on marrying. She's been with her partner for 6 years. She's going to get married in the summer of 2018. She's been putting off some cosmetic dental work, but she's wanting to get that done prior to her wedding. Now, it goes into a little bit more really explaining who this person is, and you can understand, with the wedding coming up, cost could be a concern. She's also a very private person. She doesn't like that people are putting their hands in their mouth, so you want to be sensitive about that. So it's really important to understand when you're creating a persona to think about what we call FUD. So I have Elmer over here to remind you of the acronym FUD. And FUD stands for fears, right? So in that case, Julia had fears of going to the dentist. She doesn't feel comfortable with people, invasively kind of putting their hands in their mouth, things like that. So it's really important to understand, what are their fears? What are their uncertainties? What questions they have? If they haven't been to the dentist in a long time, they may be embarrassed. There's all these different factors you want to think about. And then what are their desires? What are they ultimately looking to do? And how can you ensure that you're communicating that you're going to fulfill those desires when they come, that it's going to be a smooth experience, it's not going to be painful, you're going to kind of address some of those fears throughout the process as well. Then ultimately, how do they make decisions when they're looking at selecting a dentist? So that's a critical component as well, which as you look at the patient journey, you tend to uncover that a little bit more. And a patient journey is basically you can have the general idea of kind of channels and how they interact through different channels as they go through the process. But if you want to get really detailed, it's more of understanding what they're feeling, thinking, doing as they interact through multiple channels and kind of move through different stages of the process, from the initial kind of research awareness phase to consideration, to conversion where they're actually taking an action, to where they're scheduling an appointment, and then there comes loyalty after that, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you can kind of take a look at that and really understand what are they thinking in that moment, what are they feeling, what are they doing. So what specific actions? So you're thinking part of that is understanding, like, well, if they're on a mobile device, right? This is one thing we've seen for a lot of clients over the last few years is their mobile traffic has increased immensely, but they haven't necessarily, and they may have gone mobile, and so we look at that, but it's still about creating a great user experience on mobile. And so if they're on there and we have a video of the session and we see that they're having problems trying to they're clicking text because they think it's linked, whatever it is, right? You really want to understand all those different stages of that process and make it as smooth as possible for them. Just a general digital marketing funnel, just to give you kind of a general idea of when you think about, there's the exposure phase, more kind of branding, there's that discovery and awareness phase, going through consideration where they're actually looking at your business, they're looking at reviews, they're looking at competitors' reviews, they're going through that whole kind of process, they're looking at the type of procedures and, with today's age, we have access to so much information. They're going to know much more when they come in now than when they did 10 years ago. right? Ultimately, if you can be that resource, if you can provide that education and provide that information and be a thought leader in your industry, you're going to have a much better chance at going to the next stage, which is conversion. Them taking an action where they're calling, them emailing, and then ultimately you getting the appointment. One part a lot of people kind of miss out on is, um, which a lot of dentists do this pretty well because they know their business is so much counting upon their current customers, retaining those customers, and having a great customer relationship. But that's a critical component as well as the funnel is your current customers. And if you take care of them and they do great, then they can be your brand champions and they can go out and actually generate more customers for you from that standpoint. So, all right, looks like we're doing good on time. I'll try to go really fast, so I want to make sure I get through everything and open up any time for questions. So, search paths. This is really at that kind of discovery phase of the process. When you think about in the medical arena as a whole, that's one of the areas that we specialize in. We've seen from a data standpoint, search metrics show that people tend to look at initially in the top of the funnel, they tend to look at symptoms. They tend to look at departments. So they start searching out really quickly as sore tooth, or they might be looking at bloody gums. They're looking at those specific symptoms. They also might be looking at conditions or diseases as they're going through that. So they're saying, um, you know, I took out one of my son's teeth the other day with the dental floss. Luckily with my dad being a dentist, they used to call me the plier man, but I've learned the dental floss trick is much better. So, but you can specifically look at conditions or diseases, and then as you go farther throughout that process, you'll see in the beginning of the path, you have much less branded terms. The very beginning of the stage, there's not a lot of people who are looking for your specific practice. So there's over 90% opportunity out there, really, if you look at it that way. They haven't already made a decision. But as you go farther through the practice, farther through the journey, you'll see that roughly about 48%, almost half of the people at that point, are now looking for branded terms, where they're actually looking for your specific practice name or a practice name at that point. So it's really important that you kind of, as you understand that, you can target your strategy to take care of those clients throughout the rate. And speaking of tracking, we asked this question: how are you tracking results? Um, in some ways, this turned out a little bit better than I actually thought. I know from a lot of the people we initially do kind of consultations for, um, they don't tend to know. Asking when you fill out paperwork is kind of standard. I was a little surprised not everyone answered that. Um, Really, that should be something everyone does, right? When you're asking when they fill out the paperwork, you should have a general idea. And that's part of the stage where, hey, they've scheduled an appointment, and so I should know. It's also critical how you ask that question. Because if you ask, how did you hear about us, it elicits an auditory response. It's better to ask, how did you come to find us or something like that. And they'll give you a little bit more of a description and give them the option of selecting multiple channels, because almost in no cases is it just one instance where someone maybe told them about you. Well, they also did research, they looked at you online, they visited your website, or whatever this is. So it's important to understand all the different channels that were involved throughout that process. Asking over the phone, definitely a great practice as well. Highly recommend that, and integrating in everything. This was a little surprising. A lot of people not really tracking um, at all. I mean, that's like not even asking when they fill out the paperwork. Um, so I did like this though. There's quite a few people using dynamic phone call tracking, which is something we highly recommend. It allows you to understand where your calls are coming from, and if they're coming from your organic SEO, if they're coming from your social media strategies, whatever they are, you can actually generate and track those calls from different sources. And of course, conversions and analytics, everyone should have those set up really easy when someone completes a form, fills something out. So it was good to see that some people are tracking results, but it's a long ways. And as you can see from some of the challenges we talked about as far as what practices are facing, uh, understanding how to track the results was a critical component. So I'm just going to give you a couple suggestions as far as things that you should be trying to work towards, as far as getting a grasp on all these things and understanding what metrics that you should be tracking. Um, Ultimately, there's different levels of metrics that you should be tracking. Obviously, looking at traffic overall to your website is important. Understanding time on site. There's all those kind of factors that are kind of the symptoms, so to speak, right? But ultimately, we also want to look at what are the conversions overall, and what are they by channel. A channel could be search, social, right? Channel could be paid campaigns. You could segment your analytics and see how many from your paid campaign, how many conversions have you got, and what is your actual cost per acquisition in that paid channel. You have to do some different um, kind of math to make sure that you're getting that from your organic channels and things like that. But that's really what you should be looking to understand is what channels are driving conversions. And so that's where we see some of the results as far as what channels are working for people is because they're tracking that. Then now they may be looking at it and just guessing from some standpoint, but it's more important to really understand and have this information. Now you also want to look at your calls by channel, and you're not going to be able to do that unless you have some sort of call tracking type service. We recommend CallRail. It's something we use internally for our clients, but that's something you can set up and kind of show different phone numbers based on where they're coming from. I can get into more and explain some of the difference. There used to be SEO concerns around using call tracking numbers, and I can kind of explain that if you have questions. So I talked about cost per acquisition by channel. It is a little more difficult to come up with, but you should be working towards trying to get that metric. What that'll do is it'll say our cost per acquisition in this channel. When we're doing this, it costs us, $200 to get a new patient. This channel costs us $500 to get a new patient. This one is costing us, 100. And then if you take that into account with the volume, because while I won't get into all the details now, but if you take that into account, then you really can understand where should you be investing your money, and ultimately what's your ROI, and then segmenting that by channel, right? So as you understand, in search, we're getting a 5-to-1 return on investment. Definitely, we need to continue that channel. Our campaign over here that we've been doing, maybe on social, organic, hasn't produced a lot of ROI. It's supporting some of our other channels, so we want to do it, but maybe we shouldn't be putting as much of a focus on there. That's kind of how you should be looking at it, and that's what we'll see with some of the larger practices. Now, one of the questions we ask is, do you have a documented digital marketing strategy? Um, Again, I was a little surprised that actually 33% said they did have a documented digital strategy. Um, that's probably, I still think that that's a little higher. I think some people might be thinking they have a strategy when they have some general ideas of what they're wanting to do kind of written down. It's really important, and I'm going to outline a little bit more about strategy. So I really want you to tie everything together. It's really critical that, it's that old saying is if you don't, most people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. So it's important that you tie it all together with a comprehensive strategy and understand how to use a multi-channel approach to target, effectively your potential patients, that your ideal patients for you. So I do want to throw this out there as well. I wanted to thank everyone who participated in the study and give this as a thank you to you. Um, we are offering basically 3 free hours of digital strategy consulting work. Now I'm limiting that. We scheduled 4 openings per month that we can do that on. So it is limited, but if we have excess, we can schedule it out in November, etc. And so we'll just make that happen. But it is something that we just want to do. We can help you, and generally what we do with that is we'll go through and really understand. We'll do an audit of your current site. We'll look at your local listings, your citations, your link profile. We'll maybe do a little bit more of a competitive analysis if you want us to on certain competitors, and we sit down with you and kind of show you where some things that you can do to improve your online presence as a whole. And generally in this, we just want to provide a ton of value. So if you go to webfor.com/3 hours, fill out that form, we'll get back to you right away and see when we can schedule that for you. But thank you again for participating in the study and for helping us with this. All right, so let's talk about strategy. When I think of strategy, I've written a lot about what we call a customer-centric strategy. I personally believe that if your strategy isn't customer-centric, your strategy is ineffective. What I mean by that is it's kind of like saying I have a strategy, but I don't have a target, right? I want to shoot this arrow at something and hit it. Okay, well, you need to have a target. So everything you do should really understand your customer. Your patient is at the center of your entire marketing strategy. Now, from a digital strategy and an offline strategy, just an overall integrated strategy, you also kind of want to look at endorsers. So in addition to a patient kind of persona that you might create, you might even look at creating an endorser persona if you're depending on the size of your practice and how you want to target that. Endorsers are people like media influencers in your specific industry. Even your customers are endorsers, peers, other peers, vendors, things like that. There are people who might mention you, who might link to you, who might give you a testimonial, all those kind of things. The media who might actually link to content. And we can dive into that a little bit more at another point, but definitely a key component of the strategy. And then you really want to understand your community. Um, for dental practices especially, community is critical. That's why it is good to have the social component. It may not produce as high ROI, but it can really explain how involved you're in the community. And most dental practices have that kind of 5 to 10 mile radius that's the critical um, area as far as where their patients are coming from. So you definitely want to understand your community is a critical component of it. So now that you have that, now you want to start looking at other channels, right? And so we identified that, there's 3 major channels that we tend to look at on the digital side. There's search, there's social, and there's direct. Now, direct is basically when someone reaches out directly to you. It could be email, it could be text messages, things like that. But a true integrated strategy is going to look at least these kind of 3 large channels as part of it, and there might be other factors that are involved as well. Now, search is generally when there's a demand for what you're offering. And in your industry, you don't have to worry about that. But in other cases, we had a client come in once recently that said he needed SEO, but he had invented a brand new product, and there was literally no one looking for the product or the problem that it solved, right? There was no demand. So search was not the right channel for them to do that. Social, right? With social media, there's a few components that we talk about social being a benefit for your business. One is the more of a defined persona you have, the more targeted and niche persona you have because of the social targeting features that you can do, targeting by title, targeting by psychographic and demographic details. Social can sometimes be a good channel there. And generally, the more social your business is as a whole, the more social media be effective for you. Basically, if people don't want to talk about your product or service with friends or other people out loud, if for instance, Preparation H, maybe not something that you're probably going to go on social media and share some content from Prep H, saying, "Hey, I really like this." It's just not something you want to do. But restaurants, dentists do very well on the social side as far as the content they can share. But again, it's still one of those areas that's not necessarily on the high end social side, like a restaurant or a spa or something like that. And then you have direct. Now, direct is great for dentists. When someone reaches out to you through creating emails reminding patients or text messages, reminding patients about their appointments, through reminding them that they haven't had a checkup in a while, all those things will help with the repeat side of the business. And depending on how you structure it, it can help with driving them farther down the conversion funnel as well. So now, none of the strategy would come together without some of these other things, right? Your website, your content, user experience, brand, your reputation management, and analytics, those things should be throughout all these other channels, right? So from that standpoint, you really want to understand how is my website, being utilized in search. And on the social side, you should be setting up like Facebook Open Graph and different social type uh, code that allows your website to be displayed better on social media. Your content strategy, are you creating content that is useful, that's educational, that is maybe entertaining for your target audience, right? So the better you know your target audience, the better you can do that. And when you create great content and it's showing up in search engines, right? It's getting shared on social media, you're sending out in your email campaign, all these channels are working together, and ultimately the more touches you have in these different channels, people, it's like gravity pulling them closer to the center to be part of your community, part of your brand, and ultimately become a customer. And if they have a great experience, then that's when they become a brand champion. So that's kind of the overall visual of what a good strategy should look like, and thinking about the customer through the patient through the whole journey as a whole. Now, most people's strategies are more like this. They're like, well, I'm doing a little bit of social, I have some search and direct, but they don't really work together. I'm not even really creating content, but when I do create content, it's haphazardly. It doesn't get repurposed for search engines. It doesn't get sent out in our email campaigns. And the user experience and these different devices, again, these are all things that this is more often what you see in a strategy as a whole. Now, here's what a strategy should look like for based on the information that we got back from some of the dentists in the study. And overall, this has generally been kind of more of something we've recommended based on the research that we've done as well. Is again, we use size of the circle to kind of show more of a focus in that area. So for dentists, search should be one of their primary focuses. Social should also be a big component. You can use the paid social strategy as well as paid search to target people locally in the very close vicinity of your practice, that most high probability people to come to your practice, right? So you can improve your return on investment there. You can use direct email type strategies, text strategies to stay in contact with them. And all these things should work together. That's what a good cohesive strategy should look like. You should have be thinking about what are the questions that our patients, our customers have throughout the different stages of the process, and does our content, right? Does our content address those questions in a manner that is, engaging for them? So if you have it set up that way and you're creating a great experience, you have great content, you're going to have better results. Now, again, analytics, this is one of the key components. All these things come through this, right? Your analytics should be tracking how effective are these channels for us? Is search driving the right, driving more visitors? Is social media really helping us drive engagement? And so you want to make sure you can have analytics across all of these sources that are kind of coming together so you really understand how that's working. Now, um, I wanted to just tell you guys a little bit about Webfor as a whole. Part of the reason why we did this whole study is we're looking to specialize in the dental industry. And basically, if at some point in the future you are in need of services like ours, we'd love to be in consideration. And that's really why we're doing this. So our core competencies are search engine optimization, content strategy overall, website design, user experience and development, CRO, search engine marketing, and really the benchmarking analytics. We have a lot of expertise on the social side as well, but we tend to feel it's better for our clients to handle a lot of that in-house. There's a lot of customer service elements to that, and so we can help guide our clients on that area as well, but that's kind of the general, our main areas of expertise that we really love to work in those areas. Now, I founded the company in 2009 with the business model that we call the 3 R's, and that's relationship, results, and return on investment. We really focus everything we have, our processes, everything on making sure we deliver in those areas, that we have great relationship with our customers, that we're very responsive, that we're in contact on an ongoing basis, that we're delivering results, and that it's actually tracked investment. Because I basically say, if you put yourself in the client's shoes, put ourselves in your shoes, and do what we would do if we were in your area. So we need to make sure that I know I wouldn't continue spending money on something that wasn't producing at least a 3 times return on investment. And so we want to make sure that we're producing a positive return on investment that we're doing for you. So our competitive advantage is really our people, our passion, and our processes. Um, it's a critical component for us as far as having a great culture, hiring amazing people that just are very passionate about what they do, continually educating themselves and developing processes that over time. When we're also very proud of winning the Vancouver Business Journal's Best in Business in 2 categories, web design and marketing companies, just earlier this year for the 2016 year. And talking about myself in the third person, I'm also the president of SEMPX, which is a nationally recognized nonprofit. Really, we started the nonprofit a little over 11 years ago, and it's focused on supporting, educating, and connecting the digital marketing community as a whole. So we help teach in-house marketing people, agencies, and business owners alike all the different tactics on marketing. Our amazing team of people here, and some of our props. We've been mentioned on sites like Forbes, Mashable, Huffington Post, Search Engine Journal. We're A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. And of course, you can check out our reviews online. You can see like here, Amanda, she helped them. She said our patients love it. Dr. LeGras also left us a great review here as well. So again, you can kind of check those out just to get an understanding of our reputation. And we really love helping businesses grow. We don't take on every client, just to be very upfront. We choose our clients as carefully as they choose us, and we can kind of talk about that more as far as the conversation goes. But we'd love to start that conversation at least. And a great way to start that conversation now for you, and I think everyone should take advantage of this that participated, is taking advantage of the 3 free hours. And it's a great way for both of us to get to know if we're a good fit, and also provide you with a ton of value that can help grow your business, and yeah, keep moving forward. So with that, I want to just say thank you so much for your time. This has been a lot of work and a lot of great learning experience for us, and we're looking forward to publishing this study online. So um, I'll open it up to if there's any questions, and I have Andrew. Andrew, if you could help me and tell me if there's